Oh, look at that. That's nice. Hi, I'm Dennis R. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is April 22nd of 2015. Home group is Evergreen South Breakfast Group in Auburn, Washington. We meet on Sundays at 9 a.m. at the South King County Alano Club. Everybody come on out and enjoy it. It's a good meeting. This is our first take on Sober in Seattle. This is going to be our introductions. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in Heidelberg, West Germany. Grew up in the Chicago area. My father was in the military. He was also the alcoholic in our life, and he did abandon us twice during my youth. When I was 7, and he came back when I was 10, and then again when I was 16, and then he came back into our lives at 28. I shouldn't say he came back into our lives; he was always there, but and then he passed away on May 31st of 2013 with 25 years of sobriety. So I was very aware of what Alcoholics Anonymous was and what it could do for somebody. So we welcome you to this podcast, and hope that you hear something that you want me to stretch it out even some more. Okay, okay. So really quickly, I was in 2013 with the start of my father's death. There were another couple of events that happened very quickly in about a 1 month period. And the answer I had for all those events was to drink. And I started drinking pretty heavily. There's a lot more to my story, but we just don't have the time for that, maybe in a future podcast. But so I had started drinking heavily from 2013 all the way up to October of 2014. I was probably drunk 90% of the time. So the other 10% of the time, I was able to maintain some kind of semblance of sobriety that allowed me to continue to make money. I was working out of my house as an outside sales rep. So I was living on residual income and didn't get very many new customers. But so these 4 events happened, and I had no answers except for to drink. And so I drank heavily, like I said, from 2013 to 2014, October 2014. And then I was sitting there on my deck, excuse me, in Tukwila, I should say beautiful Tukwila, and just getting drunk. And I realized I needed to stop drinking. I needed to stop drinking. I was killing myself. So I did. I stopped drinking for October and November of 2014. But then I went on a sales trip to Brooklyn to have we had a proposal for a nationwide store where we were going to do all the printing and signage and all the stuff for this store. And so after not drinking for 2 months, I found myself in Brooklyn. I asked the guy at the hotel where was a good place to eat, and he pointed across the street to a bar. And I walked into that bar, and I saw those taps, the beers, and I was an IPA guy, and I had 4 that day, and then a couple the next day, but it was on, and I was just shocked at how rapid the decline went. I went from, it just went fast. We made it back to Portland, which is where the head office was of where I worked. There was a Christmas party there. I didn't want to be at the Christmas party. I just wanted to get home to Tukwila so I could drink. And so from that December of 2014 to April 22nd of 2015, when I did get sober, I was drunk 100% of the time. And it was just a horrible existence. It was, I was on my way to dying, and I was okay with that. But just really quickly, my daughter showed up at my apartment. She sent me a text. She said that something's wrong with the car. Could I take a look at it? And of course, I was drunk, so I'm thinking I'm a mechanic and I can take a look at it for sure. And then I go down to see her when she shows up, and my son's with her. And he was in the military, or he is in the military, and he was on leave, and he kind of surprised me. And then they both saw the shape I was in. At 10:30 in the morning, I was already drunk, hadn't shaved, wearing my same crappy clothes that I've worn for a week, and I was a mess. They took me to the store, bought me some food, and then 2 weeks later, I was on my way to detox and on my way to a much better, happier place. I was in detox for 5 nights and 6 days. I got out on the sixth day, and then I started this road, this road that has saved my life. And Alcoholics Anonymous, it's it's a gift that was given to me, and I cherish it every day. And I'm a big guy. I'm actually a big believer in prayer, and I've learned how to pray, and that makes everything a little bit better. So I've hit my 5 minute mark, so I'm going to turn it over to the next drunk.
The next prospect. My name is John Peoples, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, John.
My friends call me Peeps. I had that nickname since first grade at St. Joseph's School. I'm born in Seattle. Been here all my life. I did briefly lived in Houston, Texas, and not my cup of tea. And my sobriety date is January 7, 2019. I have over 30,000 hours today, clean and sober. And I'm really happy for every minute of that. And in my family, alcoholism was a way of life and death. I grew up in both sides of my family. Even our in-laws were full of alcoholics and drug addicts. And very early on in my life, alcohol had a very huge negative, almost fatal impact upon me. When I was 8 years old, I was in a car with my grandmother and her husband. And I'm 8, and I'm reading the National Geographic, and I hear my grandmother say, "Dan, look out." And I look up, and there's a telephone pole right in front of the car. And all I had time to do was sort of lean into the dashboard. And I sustained head injuries. They were both thrown from the vehicle. And so at that, I look back on that moment now, and I don't know how I survived that. And it just shows me that my life is not my own. My dad, when he died 3 years ago, had 49 years in the program. So from the time I was a teenager on, I heard a lot about Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think that kind of ruined it for me, that and going to Catholic school, because I could not get with the spiritual part of the program. And I know now that is the key ingredient in the program, and probably why I'm enjoying my life so much right now. I was that person who just could not surrender to a higher power. And I was in and out of the program since the early 90s. I grew up in Seattle when it was a real party time. My drugs of choice I had multiple: alcohol, of course, psychedelics, and marijuana. And I went to at least 7 rock festivals. You can tell what kind of upbringing I had. I had a football scholarship to the University of Montana, and I partied my way out of school doing that thing of being away from home, 18, insecure. I mean, the child of alcoholics. And I look back sometimes, I used to regret what happened. But now I know that the way I was brought up, that was like the only way I was going to do that. I was not going to do it well. When I found out they weren't going to make me go to class, I barely went to class. And again, I lost my scholarship after a couple of years because of those tendencies. And through working the steps, I am now totally devoted to the steps. I can accept that and learn from what I have experienced. One of my favorite things to read, it's not AA approved literature, is A New Pair of Glasses by Chuck C. And I read that when I had like 3 months, and it just opened my heart to really want to work the steps to the best of my ability. I thought when I summarized everything he said in that book, if you do the steps, you're not going to have cravings, and you're going to be happy, joyous, and free. And that's worked out for me. Probably the most surprising thing that's happened in the last 6 months, I have a new appreciation for being sober every day. I was pretty happy before, but things have gotten better and better. And within the last month, it's been like another major upgrade in that. I was at a meeting less than about a month ago where I actually heard people testifying to the power of living in the solution. And when I really applied myself even further, I got some of that joy. I have a very complicated life. A bunch of my friends are experiencing terminal illnesses. I'm trying to remodel my house. I have a 90-year-old mom who thinks she can drive, and a 30-year-old son. And yet, through all of that, these are the best days of my life. And I don't take it for granted anymore. My secret sauce, if there is one, is I go to a lot of meetings. I've been to over 3,300 meetings in my 1,252 days. And that's my sign of a commitment to myself. Before, I was always looking for the easier, softer way, get maximum results with minimal effort, which is the classic, another definition of half measures. And I know that that does not work for me. I've relapsed so many times, it's not even funny. Including one time I had a year and a half and I took a job for an outfit called marijuana.com. I'm a former writer and editor. And so my sobriety lasted about 2 months after that. And then it took me over 3 years to come back to the program. So I'm really grateful to be here today. And for me, COVID and Zoom was a real blessing. It really allowed me to jump into meetings and into the program full steam ahead. And I'm really grateful for that. Thanks for letting me share it today.
Thanks, John. Well, my name is Lara R., and I am an alcoholic.
Hey, Lara.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in and listening to Sober in Seattle podcast. This is our first premiere edition of Sober in Seattle. We're hoping that this podcast will bring to light, some of the timely local issues of Alcoholics Anonymous. Things that individual members are struggling with, things that groups might be discussing, things that maybe groups have gone through, and definitely how individuals in the local Seattle AA scene stay sober, maybe, highlight some events that are going to be coming up, talk about Seattle Intergroup, of course, and what's going on here. But this is another way to carry a message to the alcoholic who still suffers, and try to create some unity within the groups and members in Seattle and the surrounding areas. So the Seattle Intergroup services all the way from Snohomish County, King County line down to Pierce County. And so we offer services to all kinds of groups, thousands of groups every week that are held in this area. So we hope to use this podcast to bring a variety of voices from around the area and talk about all kinds of things. So I'm looking forward to it.
How can people contact us, Lara?
Well, we do have an email, soberinseattle@seattleaa.org. You can, if you or your group would like to be featured on the Sober in Seattle podcast, we'd be happy to hear from you. Happy to hear your ideas about topics that you'd like us to discuss or address, or talk to the fellowship about. That's really what this is for. Is another outlet to A, carry the message, and B, a place for groups to be heard. So that's how you can contact us here at Sober in Seattle. But I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm currently the office manager here at the Seattle Intergroup, and I have never been so amazed, humbled, and constantly reminded of how important it is to serve and carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. And it wasn't until I started working here did I realize exactly in how many ways Seattle Intergroup does that, and how long Seattle Intergroup has been doing that. And how grateful I was that all of the work that has been done up to the point I started working here, I was able just to step in and keep doing the things that have already been put into place. It took me, the learning curve was a little rough for me at first, but I am forever grateful for all of the time and energy that the previous office managers and assistant office managers have put in, and the previous board members have put in the time and energy and passion for Alcoholics Anonymous and carrying the message that has gone into the sustaining development and sustaining of Seattle Intergroup. It's been amazing. So just a little quick story. The first time one of the things Seattle Intergroup does is we sell AA conference approved literature. And the first time I opened up, I'm going to cry just thinking about it, but the first time I opened up a box of big books to stock our shelves, it just, because I have such reverence for the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it brought me to my knees. I was like, I cannot believe I am here. So my sober date is August 19th, 1986. I got sober when I was 17 years old. And I've been sober a while. But to have all that experience, I mean, I did not go to school to be an office manager. My background is in English and art. But this opportunity made itself available, and I just tried. And actually, the assistant office manager at the time, Anita, who was leaving, strongly recommended me for the position. And so I just thought, gosh, if God wants me here, then God will put me here, and this is where I'm at, and this is where I ended up. And so, although I haven't gone to school to do anything I'm doing here, I feel like I put in, a good 35 years in Alcoholics Anonymous to make myself ready for this position. And I'm grateful. So yeah, I grew up in Kent and Renton area, and that's still where I live. I haven't moved around very much. I have lived in a few different places in Washington State, but Washington and Seattle area is my home. I started using and drinking when I was 11 years old, and it was very concurrent drugs and alcohol at the same time within a very short period of time. Alcohol was always the base, the foundation of my addiction, my alcoholism, and my drug use was just to complement or amplify my. It didn't take me very long to realize that the more drugs I used, the more I was able to drink. Because I always drank so much that I would throw up, right? Like I never had one or two. I just never drank like that. I always drank to the point of throwing up. And I realized that if I did the right kind of drugs, I would not throw up, and I could just drink and drink and drink. And that was like, the jackpot for me. So that's, and that pretty much characterizes my very short drinking and drugging career. I started when I was 11 and quit hopefully for the last time when I was 17. But I pretty much, I was raised in an alcoholic home. So I was like submerged in alcoholism and massive drug use. Early on, I saw it. I grew up with it. Both my parents were drug addicts and alcoholics, although my dad celebrated 40 years this year, and me and my mother actually got sober on the same day.
Wow.
Together. And she passed a couple of years ago, but she died sober from alcohol also. So I had a short and illustrious, career in drug and alcohol abuse. I'm one of the people that I believe I was born an alcoholic. I didn't have a shot in HE double hockey sticks to drink normally. It just was not something that I was ever going to be able to do. And then I also had a predisposition that it was something I never had an interest in doing. I really enjoyed the oblivion that came with drinking. I really, not only oblivion, but just I like to say the only award I ever got as a child growing up was for being most concerned. I literally have a I don't know what happened to it, but I had a certificate that in second grade, I got a certificate for being most concerned. And I got to tell you, I'm still a very concerned individual, but drinking made it so I didn't care anymore. And that is really was a huge release for me. And freedom. It was a huge freedom because I cared a lot about the stuff that was going on in the world and in my family and couldn't do anything about any of it. And so alcohol was the freedom that I needed. And then, of course, eventually became the prison that I couldn't get out of. So in turn, Alcoholics Anonymous has become what I needed to become truly free. It has, there's no shortcuts. There's no easy way out. Marlene H. likes to say I've been sober, well, 40 something years with no shortcuts. And I just love that she says that because there's no shortcuts. The quickest way through hell is straight through. It's just the only way, I hear about, well, this might be controversial, but I hear about people having psychedelic experiences. And of course, we all have read about Bill Wilson, using LSD, early in his sobriety to try to find a spiritual experience. He didn't sustain that because, it didn't work, right? I mean, ultimately, so like psychedelic experiences, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. It's like, that's a shortcut that I can't afford. I'm going to have to do it the slow path, and that is through prayer and meditation, right? And I can experience the release from my ego and from my mind and from my problems through prayer and meditation. And I can't afford to take the shortcut of psychedelics because it awakens the beast in me. I'm just sure of it. I haven't tried it, but I just not even willing to try it. But that's taken years for me to get there. I really, really, really have been invested the majority of my sobriety in emotional experiences. I've been married a few times in sobriety, divorced a couple of times, caused a lot of harm in my sobriety, totally sober, to people who didn't deserve it. And so I have a lot of amends that I've gotten to make to people for harm that I've caused in sobriety. So emotional experiences, for everything they are and aren't, are for me now, don't hold as much weight and depth for me. The spiritual experience that's talked about in step 12 is what I'm striving for now. And like I said, it's taken me years of sobriety, of sober living, of working steps, of going to, I don't even know how many thousands of meetings. I don't even know how many 4 steps, like at least, 20 or 30 4 steps, I would imagine, for me to understand that it really is about the relationship with God, or with a power greater than myself. I struggled with that idea of what God is and isn't. I'm super grateful that God continues to work in my life, whether I believe in God or not. That has been abundantly clear in my sobriety, because I've stayed sober. And so I'm really interested in a spiritual experience now. After 30 something years of sobriety, I'm done with the emotional experiences because I'm exhausted, quite frankly.
Well, short term, I'm really excited to see how this podcast is received and what kind of feedback we get. But also towards that end, my new goal, I like to go to meetings, is I'm going to try to go to 100 different meeting locations throughout Puget Sound area. Right now, I'm up to like 35 different meeting locations that I've been to.
What's your home group now, John?
I have 3 home groups. I'm very insincere. Holly Court, which is kind of small. Empire Way, which is kind of big. And I'm also a home group member at Magnolia Lutheran Speakers Meeting.
Oh, that's great.
So going to meetings, again, it's my commitment to me. that I'm serious about at this time. And again, I'm anxious to meet people across the region. I have not been to very many meetings on the east side or north of Seattle, and I want to change that. Hopefully, in that process, I'll get to meet a lot of the people who might be listening to this, and I'd love to hear what people think we should be talking about. Searching for
Absolutely.
that.
Well, in your search for meetings, you could come to my home group, which is a new purpose group, which meets at Bethlehem Lutheran Church on Thursdays at 7. And that's a great meeting. It's also a women's meeting on Mondays at 7.
Are you inviting me to the women's meeting? You're not.
No, although we wouldn't kick you out
I have to wear
if
a
you
dress.
had to drink. And when is your meeting? Your Sunday morning at
Sunday
9
at
o'clock?
9 o'clock, right?
All right, great.
I want to throw something in there too about what you had said, Lara, when you said about opening up the big books and how that was going to make you cry. And that's the thing that I just love so much about Alcoholics Anonymous is my ability to be emotional. Now, I think, like you had said, you've gone through the 36 years of emotional. Now you're ready for the spiritual. But I'm just starting again to be emotional. And there's not many meetings that I don't get teared up in because people start talking truth and emotional. And I just love that because, life's emotional. There's no way around it. If I'm doing it correctly, right, I am going to be happy and sad and all that I will love and I will have, and grief. And I just, when we were down in Seaside, those 7 speakers or whatever they were, every one of them made me tear up. I mean, it was just amazing that and then with you saying about opening up those books and I can see it and they're all new and they're all ready to give somebody a sober life, right? That book is going to be taken out and change somebody's life. That's incredible. It's incredible and it's emotional.
Yeah, I was at an Empire Way meeting a little over a month ago, and I feel like it has changed my life because people were demonstrating so strongly how they're living in the solution. I go to a lot of meetings sometimes, and people are just talking about their problems. And at that meeting, one of the other members shared that if you don't like the spiritual part of the program, and I didn't, that used to be my excuse to leave. If you don't like the spiritual part of the program, that's like saying you don't like the wet part of water. And again, it took me forever to be able to accept that I had to surrender to a higher power, however I wanted to define it. And I didn't make any progress until I did, because after I had a relapse after a year and a half, it took me over, like say, 3 years to come back. And it wasn't until I was willing to go down on a knee and say, please help me. I was always, I guess, wanting God to prove itself to me. And it was in that moment that I was willing to just ask for that help, not knowing what I was going to get. I ended up going to 3 meetings that day, so it's been that way ever since.
That's great.
Do we need to talk about our timing? How often are we going to do this, guys?
Well, we were talking about monthly at the beginning, and we'll see what kind of feedback we get. If anybody sends us besides spam in our new email account. But I think it's going to be depending on what we get from the people that are listening. If it warrants every, twice a month, you can do that. I don't think we want to have issues sit on the burner for too long or on the back burner and bring everything up as we can. That's just my opinion, and I should say my humble opinion, because all my opinions are humble.
Well, as we work through this and figure things out, I think it's important to highlight maybe some of the things that are going on in the Seattle area in the next month then for events.
Yes.
Right. So I do know that Seattle Intergroup has a spring assembly on June 21st, and that's at 7 p.m., and that's a hybrid situation. And the assemblies are different than regular board meetings in that every group in the greater Seattle area has a vote at the assemblies, which happen twice a year, once in June and the next one will be in December. So even if you don't have an intergroup rep, you can send a representative from your group, it doesn't matter who it is, to cast a vote at the spring assembly. And we're going to be talking about the creation of a 12-step committee at this assembly, and we're going to be talking about all kinds of great
Where
things.
is the in-person?
The in-person is here at
Right.
Greater Seattle Intergroup, right here at 5507 6th Avenue South, Seattle, in Georgetown. The next thing that's going to be happening at Intergroup is a sponsorship workshop, which is going to be on June 25th at 10 a.m. And that is also a hybrid. All this information can be found on our website, seattleaa.org. But that's geared towards people who are looking to become a sponsor and how to best be a sponsor. And so if you're interested in that or want to share some information about sponsorship, feel free to join us.
I could use that.
Anything else happening in the area that you guys know about?
The only things that I have in Auburn is in August, stuff coming up in August, so we can probably address that next month.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, great. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dennis, and thanks, John.
Thank you, Lara.
This is another meeting. I love that. All you need are two drunks and a resentment to have a meeting. So,
And now a microphone.
yeah,
Now we have 3 drunks and maybe 3 resentments.
absolutely.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay, until
Thank
next
you.
time.
See-
Bye.